So welcome back students in this series of Monster Technology. So in the previous module we have studied about HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which is used to define how the structure of the program or how the structure of a website looks like. But now in this module we learn about CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So it is clear by the name, it is something related to the styling of the module. So in CSS, we'll learn how to design a web page or how to design the structures written in the HTML. So if you define a H1 tag, a paragraph tag, or any tag by using the HTML, so it will just only show the data onto the screen or the data onto the document. But if you want to design that data, if you want to add some colors, add some fonts, margins, anything related to the designing part, then you have to use the CSS only. Now let's understand the syntax of the CSS. So CSS basically consists of two parts, a declaration and a selector. So selector defines which part of your HTML document is to be selected or which part of your HTML document is to be used or is to be picked up to apply the CSS. Now the declaration consists of two parts. One is property and the other is value. A property can be anything. Property can be size, property can be background, property can be color, background color, border width, height, weight, anything else. And a value can be specified for value can be varied for the each property. For example, if the property is the size, then value can be 5 pixels, 10 pixels, large, small, medium. If the property is color, then value can be blue, red, orange, or any hexadecimal code. So this is how a CSS syntax looks like. So to use CSS in your HTML document, you have to define the CSS into the head part of the document. So the body part will consist the elements and the head part will consist the CSS which defines the styling for that particular element. So let's directly jump to the coding part without wasting any time. Let me show you how the CSS actually works in the real life. So let me define a paragraph tag and a h1 tag. So I have just defined two tags. One is a h1 tag and there is a paragraph. Now I want to style these tags. For styling, we use CSS. For CSS, we have to define a style tag into the head part. Now, as I mentioned into the PPT, first of all, we have to write down a selector. Selector basically defines which part of a document has to be selected. So let me select the h1 tag first. So in this h1 tag, I will write first of all the color. So I want color to be, let's say I want color brown. Next we'll write background color. I want a background color of, let's say, aquamarine. Next, let's say we want to design font size. So font size, let's say 50 px. Now if I see output of this page, let me execute this CSS test. So this is the output. Now this is the output. Our color is brown, our font color is brown and background color is aquamarine. Here you can see font color is brown and the background color is aquamarine. Also you can see the size of the text is quite increased by the 50 pixel. If let's say if I raise this to 100, the output will be changed like that. Now let's design this paragraph also. For paragraph, I have to select paragraph. After this, let me select paragraph tag. Now let me change the color first of all of paragraph. Let's make it to aqua and also the font size. Font size. So now font size is the property and let's set the font size 50 px. And this 50 px is the value. Also let's style this font style and make it italic. Save this. And when we open the code, you can see color is You can see color is aqua, size is 50, and the font style is basically italic. So this is how you can implement CSS on different tag. Now, if I used to write any kind of other tag also, let me write another paragraph. This is my second line. If I save this and check the output, so this paragraph will also get affected because I have selected the complete paragraph tag. Like that, if I create any h1 tag, it will also get affected. But if I create a h2 tag, then I have to define another h2 property for that. Otherwise, it will not get selected. So now check output for the second paragraph tag. Here you can see this is my second line with the color aqua, style italic, and size 50 pixels. So this is basically how you can implement the CSS into your HTML document to style various elements written in your body tag. So here we selected various elements by their tag, but we can also select multiple elements by different type of properties. For that, we'll study about CSS selectors. So there are basically four types of selectors in CSS. The first is CSS element selector. Second is CSS ID selector. Right now we are using the CSS element selector. So we have selected a single type of element. So from that particular page, every h1 tag and every paragraph tag gets selected. So that we are using the HTML. So we are using the CSS element selector. Also, we can use CSS ID selector, which is used to select the elements of a particular ID. We can use a CSS class selector, which is used to select the element by its class. Also, we have the CSS universal selector, which is used to select each and every element, each and every tag written onto that particular document. So this is the four basic type of selectors into the CSS. Let's try this one by one and check the output. Now let's make ID of this paragraph tag. Now first of all, let's remove this part and let's make ID of this paragraph. ID equals to par1 and ID of this paragraph equals to par. Now I only want to implement my CSS on this particular paragraph, so I use a ID selector. For ID selector, you have to use a hashtag and then write the ID of that particular part. So I'll write para1. Now I can add a style. So let me write down the font size and let's take the font size XX large. Next, let's the color and let's make color to the blue. Save this. Now you will see only one out of two paragraphs get affected. So you can see this. So the paragraph with the ID para1 is got selected and CSS only implemented to that particular paragraph. The rest is remained untouched. Now if I want to implement CSS on this particular paragraph, I have to write down hashtag para2 par2. Now I'll write font weight by bold, also font style to italic. Let's save this out and check the output. So here you can see the font is now bold and the style is italic. So this is how you can select an item by its ID. Now in the next example, let's check out how to select item by its class. So let me add more examples of h1 tag. So let's take an example. Let's differentiate them by giving them separate classes. So for this I'll give class 1 and for second h1 tag I'll give the class 2. Now also let's take another example. Name its class as. Now I only want to implement the CSS on the element with the class 1. So for class we'll write, so as for ID, we'll write this hashtag. For class, we'll write a dot. So we'll use a dot operator. So for dot 1, we'll implement font style to be italic and background color to be yellow. Let's save this and check the output. So only the first heading got affected. Now I'll implement styling on class. So for class 2, I'll add font size to be 200 pixels and font and color to be say dark salmon. Let's save this and check the output. Now you can see. So these are our second heading and third heading, which is implemented by the CSS by selecting the class. So next we have the universal selector. You can use a star for the universal selector. So if you implement star and then you implement any property. So in star selector, we'll write down a property font family, and font family, let's select this. This is a very cool font. You'll check it out like this. So you can see this font is applied to all the elements written into that particular page, each and every element. This is done by universal selector into the CSS. So these are the 4 types of selectors: the class selector, ID selector, element selector, and universal selector. That's all for the introduction. So this is how you can use CSS to design the HTML elements written into their body part. That's all for this video. We'll discuss colors and comments into the next part of the series. Thank you.